Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to this week's episode of the Montpelier Happy Hour here on WVEW LP Brattleboro. I'm your host and producer of the show, Olga Peters, and this is where we talk about how everything in Montpelier shakes out for the rest of us. Before we dive into the conversation, I just want to give listeners a little apology. I'm sorry there was no show last week. It was one of those weeks that unfortunately something had to give, and it was the Montpelier happy hour. So I apologize, but I'm very happy that today we have Randy Holhut, news editor from The Commons, here to bring us up on a lot of events happening in Windham County this week and going into next week. So thank you, Randy, for being here today.
Yes, the in case of emergency break glass guest.
Hey, every show, every podcast needs one of those guests because you know what? I'm very grateful to them.
And let's get the disclaimer out of the way. The views expressed by me are my opinions and not necessarily those of Vermont Independent Media and any of the people associated with Vermont Independent Media. It's my opinion, my neck, not theirs.
So, should I surmise from that doing the disclaimer now rather than the second half of the show?
Well, we'll do that second half of the show too for the ones just tuning in.
Because are you just planning to have a lot of opinions today, Randy?
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's why I'm here.
Of course, that's why you're here. Well, before we dive in, hey, I want to thank, I just want to say to anyone celebrating Juneteenth today, I hope you are having a good time with friends and family and community. Um, Randy, let's talk about what's happening tonight, the 19th, at 5 o'clock in Brattleboro.
Yes, there'll be a reception at Sage's as kind of the pre-event for the premiere of the Amy Goodman documentary, Steal This Story, Please. And Amy will be there to sign copies of posters, books, whatever, and say hello. And then right after that at 7 is the movie. The reception is free. The tickets for the film are $15. And you can get them if there's still time to get them at latches.org, or latches no, at latches.org, if I'm not mistaken.
I will
But
double check that for you while you're talking.
okay, but John Potter, the executive director, says that he's not had a film where he's had sold so many advance tickets as this one. That they're all the performances of the film for because it'll be there for the coming week are selling very briskly. So it's this has been kind of a phenomenon for him that he's never realized there was this much of a following for Amy Goodman and Democracy Now, and that the 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 outpouring of support for this event has been amazing. I mean, tonight will probably be a pretty close to a sellout in the main theater. And
That's
since that
exciting.
and since that's a fundraiser for WVEW and BCTV, the two broadcast or media entities that carry Democracy Now! In Brattleboro and have done so for many years, uh, and also for Vermont Independent Media, which of course we have no radio, but we're kind of fellow travelers in the independent media space as a nonprofit and non-corporate owned, things that are near to Amy Goodman's heart.
That
And of
in
course,
part is what the documentary is about, isn't it? That, talking about the need for local nonprofit journalism. Am I correct?
yeah, well, not just local nonprofit journalism, just nonprofit journalism in general, since the mergers and buy-ups of media by corporate entities have been reducing the number of voices and the ability of those voices to report independently. Uh, Exhibit A being, what's happened to CBS since it got purchased by Larry Ellison and company. The gutting of their news department and the kind of push to dictate content to make it pleasing to the owners and its owners' backers.
So I have a question for you, Randy, because you've been in the news biz longer than me. But before I do that, just looping back to if you're looking for tickets for Steal This Story, Please, you can go to latches.com, latchis.com.
Okay, my bad. Flashes.com.
Um, so you know, I'm not disagreeing that the news ecosystem in general in the US is struggling right now. Those who watch the show regularly and have heard John Walters on, you have often heard him talk about how the lack of reporters at like the State House or covering campaign finance really is to the detriment of voters when it comes time for them to make a decision about who they're going to vote for. Um, and yet, this idea of a corporate entity owning a newspaper, radio station, TV station, and trying to dictate what goes out on the news. I mean, is that really new? I mean,
No, it's not. I mean, it's happened back when, at the turn of the other century when people, William Randolph Hearst and his papers and how they, created the Spanish-American War to try and boost sales. Um, the other kind of oligarchs of the time that owned newspapers in cities. And back then, journalism was there were so many different papers that you could buy one to reflect your political leanings. I mean, up until just after World War II, Boston had 7 daily newspapers that ranged from liberal to conservative.
and they
And
often published more than one edition in a day.
yeah,
True. Yeah.
even as late as the well, and television killed off a lot of newspapers and radio over the years. But even as late as the 1980s, when I got into newspapering, I worked at the Worcester Telegram Gazette, and they printed 3 editions in the morning, zoned for the whole county. And in the afternoon, they still had an afternoon paper, the Evening Gazette. They printed 6 editions, also zoned by county, with a city edition coming out in mid-afternoon.
Wow.
And
So how
because
many people were in that newsroom?
a lot. They had bureaus in, if I recall correctly, they had a dozen bureaus all over Worcester County. I worked out of the Spencer Bureau, which was kind of their western outpost, covering the towns of the Brookfields, East Brookfield, North Brookfield, Brookfield, and
Okay.
Ware and Warren and those towns. But but they had a bureau in Athol. They had a bureau in Fitchburg and Leominster and Uxbridge and Webster and just all the way out to Westboro on the east side, bordering 495. So Worcester County is a big county. That would be kind of the equivalent of an area of Bennington, Windham, and Windsor County smushed together.
Oh, wow. That is bigger than I realized. Okay.
So pretty much everything from the Quabbin Reservoir to Interstate 495 was the Telegram Gazette's territory. So they had a lot of reporters to cover all that. And that paper got sold to the family that owned the San Francisco Chronicle in 1986. That was my first experience with newspaper sales.
You've
And
gone through a few.
yeah, I've been through a few, but that was my first one. And it was kind of a traumatic experience for me because I saw the people that were mentoring me, the veterans of the staff, they were all offered buyouts, and the paper kind of didn't think that many people would accept the buyouts, but of the folks that they offered it to, and it was a considerable number, uh, about 60 of them took the buyout and left. So you had a whole generation of the paper disappear to vanish that took the choice of walking away with a buyout and a chance to work somewhere else maybe or
Hmm.
retire than stick around for the uncertainty. And what the uncertainty was, they merged the two papers together, they closed down bureaus, they started shrinking the newsroom, and now the Telegram Gazette, it got sold to the New York Times back in the 90s, and then it got sold to Gatehouse, another chain, and then Gatehouse got bought by Gannett, and now Gannett runs the paper. It's down to one edition a, a day, and is kind of has a handful of reporters covering the county.
Hmm. Wow.
And that story was repeated everywhere. Everywhere, Joyce Marcel, my beloved, she worked for the Springfield newspapers back in the 1990s. I remember the
Vermont or Massachusetts?
Massachusetts,
Okay.
a little bit bigger than Springfield, Vermont.
Yep.
But when I was competing against them back in the 80s, the Daily News was the afternoon paper, and they had six editions. The Morning Union was had three or four editions, and they covered everything from Pittsfield to the Quabbin, and were the dominant newspaper. And they, had the Sunday paper. They was just more than 100,000 circulation. Joyce's stuff appeared in the Springfield papers. When they merged their morning and afternoon papers back in the late 80s, but before Joyce's arrival. But she had lots of readers too, and now that's all gone.
Hmm. So, as someone who has watched these newspapers shrink, what impact, if any, have you seen on the local communities? Like, I guess, in true journalism style, why should we care?
Why should we care? Because you're not knowing about you're not getting the facts about what's happening at the town hall or city hall, depending on how big your community is. You're not you're not the people in charge are no one's keeping an eye on. And there have been academic studies done about that places that lose their newspapers or see, reduction of coverage, they have higher interest rates for bond issues. They have some more chance for people with their hands in the till. There's budgets go up. People aren't watching, and politicians being politicians, at least the unscrupulous kind that aren't there for public service and the good of the public, but what's in it for me,
Hmm. Hmm.
do things like that. And the commons were woefully understaffed in that regard.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find, back in the days when newspapers at every town had a correspondent, that one, the postmaster or postmistress, or the one person that ran around town and knew all the gossip and knew where all the bodies were buried and turned into notes columns every week.
Hmm.
Think of back you growing up when the reformer had Bernice. I'm thinking, forgetting her last name.
I don't remember her, but I do remember so my family right over the line in Heath, Mass, reading the Greenfield Recorder,
And
and
they
yeah,
had
the notes column, and so went to visit her aunt in Boston, and someone else did this, and the select board voted on this, and it was just a little notes column with kind of felt a little bit like community gossip, but yep, I remember sitting around the table, my grandmother
but they had
reading that
town
out loud to us all.
correspondence.
What's that?
But papers had town correspondence. I mean,
Yeah.
growing up in my little town of Hatfield, Massachusetts, I turned in my Boy Scout news when I was the troop scribe for Troop 104 to the Hatfield correspondent who dutifully turned it in, and there was my byline. Troop Randy Holhut, troop scribe for, Troop 104, reported the following from the doings of Troop 104.
Aw.
That's, I mean, that was 50 years ago, but that's how I got my first bylines in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's gone too now too.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I remember a journalist saying to me, he worked down in Baltimore, and I'm so sorry I'm forgetting his name, but he used to say that a strong newspaper, and why he was talking at the time, like why he still liked print newspaper over getting it digitally. He said because a strong newspaper, as you flip through it, you get to see the entire community. You get to see the breaking news, but then you also get the opinions of the letter to the editor and then you get community notices and you get the local sports and you get the news around towns and you get the arts calendar and stuff like that. And so by the time you flip through the whole paper, you've seen your entire community more as a whole rather than just, oh my gosh, breaking news or only local sports or something like that. You get a full picture.
Well, it's also the serendipity factor through too that you're flipping through the paper and you might come across something you wouldn't have noticed otherwise if you were just looking at the web page
Mm-hmm.
and or just clicking or if you've got your your email feed or your Facebook feed set up to get the things you're interested in
Yep.
and you get in that silo and you don't see out of it.
So,
So
in
in Amy Goodman's case, let's circle
yes, let's
back
bring it back to Amy. Good
instead of
catch.
me telling war stories about a past that's unrecoverable and never will return. Um, she has a very long record of being where the action is, risking her own neck to cover stories that people don't want covered. And from East Timor to Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you can tell how vigorously people don't want things written about by the response of the people in charge to journalists.
Yeah.
I mean, how many reporters have been killed in Gaza covering that conflict? A lot.
Yeah.
Most of the casualties in the past 2 years on the reporters who've been media workers killed in action have come from that conflict. What's been happening with ICE protests in this country? Photographers have been getting shot at by uh, by ICE agents. People had their eyes put out
Mm-hmm.
who've been photographers because of those protests. Journalists have been roughed up, okay, and photographers roughed up by law enforcement covering those things.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that and that's a green light everywhere. If a country that supposedly has a First Amendment that's supposedly uh, puts freedom of press and freedom of information and freedom of assembly and freedom of speech as the First Amendment to the Constitution, does this, then heck, we can do this to our people. And you see this as more and more repressive governments start beat on their people that decide to raise their voices when they see something that's wrong. And to the credit of people around the world, they still keep rising.
So, if you get a chance to talk to Amy Goodman tonight, do you have questions you want to ask her?
No, it's just pure admiration for the guts of that woman, for her determination to start a show on a shoestring and keep it going on that same shoestring that may have gotten a little longer over the years. But now, that her work has put it on 1,500 different community radio stations and television stations.
Budget of $1.8 billion. I
Not,
couldn't confirm that number, but I read it
no,
somewhere.
it's not billion. Joyce says 1.8 billion
Of
million.
of
Okay.
what?
Now it's a $1.8 million budget she has,
Okay.
which is chicken feed in the news business. I mean, the Commons is that's about maybe three times what the Commons is, budget is. And we're just covering Windham County. She and her operation is covering the world.
Yeah, we forget how expensive news is because you've got salaries, you've got fees to different, keeping the lights on type overhead. It's expensive to do
And
a news
equipment
organization,
and travel and paying people a decent wage for doing it,
ideally. Yeah.
ideally. And
Hmm.
you want professionals, you've got to pay a professional wage, and that's unfortunately the case is that cut people are cutting back. I the you do you notice with the new with the new with MS Now, the former MSNBC or CNN or Fox, they spend more time talking about the news than actually being out and covering it.
Yeah,
Even
it's cheaper to aggregate than
it's cheaper to
to do
aggregate.
fresh reporting.
And half the foreign and most of the foreign reporting, what would happen if the BBC suddenly vanished?
It's a good point.
And they're being squeezed too, as you probably have seen or heard. The World Service isn't quite what it used to be.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. So, with just in the interest of time, I'm trying to think of my next question. Um, I guess it comes back to again, the Commons has, well, its parent nonprofit, Vermont Independent Media, has grown a little bit, and now it oversees two newspapers. Um, Now that the joining of the Deerfield Valley News and the Commons is a few months down the road for you, um, how is that going? What do you think that means for the local communities they serve?
Well, there have been growing pains, of course, because it's two different cultures and two different newspapers,
In
but
two
we're
different regions, even if they are in the same county.
two very different regions. But the main thing is preserving that voice, and we've done our best to keep the Deerfield Valley's voice what they're used to. I mean, most of the work that we've been doing is kind of behind the scenes work in terms of streamlining some of their operations with production and with advertising and such. And there's still much to do, but maintaining that independent voice. Uh, you know, Community newspapers are having a tough time of it too, and many just, advertising is dried up for a lot of them. And for the Deerfield Valley News, if you took away the real estate advertisers, what would they'd be in a world of hurt? But they're the land of second homes and tourism, and
Hmm.
that keeps them going. And in Brattleboro, that Brattleboro kind of looks enviously up the hill to Wilmington as kind of this El Dorado of riches. And of course, you know better because you've lived there, and it's not like El Dorado; it doesn't exist.
I didn't even know Brattleboro looked at Wilmington with those glasses on. Really?
Well, I'm thinking a bit of business people or just tourism or that everyone goes up there. Why don't they
Ah,
stop in Brattleboro?
gotcha.
And that would be a subject for the next half hour, I imagine, about all the efforts to do tourism in Brattleboro and keep people from getting back on the highway after they get off at exit one for gas and munchies.
Oh yeah, that's a conversation all in of itself. Um, But before we do that, we're going to hear from some underwriters here on WVEW. LP Brattleboro. But just a reminder, there's a benefit reception with Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! Tonight, starting at 5 o'clock at Sage's. And now that's the restaurant under the Latches, correct, Randy?
Yeah, well, there's a street entrance on Flat Street,
Okay.
but yeah, that's that whole complex there.
Okay, thank you. It starts at 5 o'clock and it is a benefit for the Vermont Independent Media, BCTV, and WVEW.
Not
And then
necessarily in that order.
not in that order. Um, and starting at 7 is the documentary screening of Steal This Story, Please, and you can buy tickets at latches.com. And it will
And
be
pick,
there all week, right?
yes, and pick up your copy of The Commons if you haven't already to read Joyce Marcel's interview with Amy Goodman, which is a really good piece.
It is a good piece.
And
Thank
not
you,
cause,
Joyce.
and
I
not
wrote
because
it. I
and
read
not
it
because
this
Joyce
morning.
is sitting across from me. I'm saying that she's does her normal good work with as an interviewer.
Um, so on that note, folks, stay tuned. Randy and I will be back after this break. Welcome back to the second half of the Montpelier Happy Hour here on WVEW LP Brattleboro. If you're just joining us, I'm your host and producer, Olga Peters, and this is where we talk about how everything in Montpelier shakes out for the rest of us. I am speaking with Randy Holhut, the news editor of The Commons down here in Windham County. Hey, Randy.
And I'm bloviating on my own behalf and not on behalf of Vermont Independent Media or anybody associated with Vermont Independent Media. My opinions are my opinions, and you want to make something of it?
You can email Randy. And yes, as always, the views and opinions of everyone on the Montpelier Happy Hour are those of the hosts and the guests, nobody else. I want to quickly thank BCTV for taking the video version of this show and sharing it with media centers around the state. And hey, Randy,
Yes, they're
campaign
candidates,
season.
candidates
Candidates
everywhere.
everywhere. Um, Folks, just so you know, next week in Bellows Falls, talking about candidates and the upcoming primary in August. Bellows Falls at the Rockingham Free Public Library, so that's June 25th. It's a Thursday. Attorney General Charity Clark and Representative Michelle Boslin and Chris Lundberg, who is also running for they're the two Wyndham 3 candidates,
On the
Democrat
Democratic ticket.
candidates, I should say, are hosting an event. And then next week, that Friday, June 26th at 6 o'clock at SIT, there's a governor's candidate forum being hosted by the Windham Democratic Party. And that will be Amanda Janeau and Allie Richards.
Yes, two candidates that we've had a chance to talk with and see up in person. Joyce and I talked with Allie Richards a few weeks ago, and in this week's paper we have Annie Landenberger's piece on Amanda Janeau.
Hmm.
Uh,
So what's
she's
your sense so far of these two candidates?
Well, Allie seems to be Richard seems to be more center left,
Hmm.
a more of a pragmatist, more of she's the person who helped spearhead the Let's Grow Kids, which helped get universal pre um, childcare, a child universal childcare law enacted in Vermont. So, I
Hmm.
mean, that's a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah, it was a very, if people aren't remembering this, it was a very big bill that pulled a bunch of different strings at once in the childcare system, to kind of raise a lot of boats from helping people get training to ensuring parents can afford childcare. Yeah, it covered a lot of bases.
And the funding for it, which was a payroll tax, if I recall correctly.
Hmm.
a modest one to help fund it. So it was, a complicated issue. She pulled together a lot of different factions and groups to make it work. So she's reminds me of you, Miss Action Plan. When what do we need to do? How do we need what do we need to get there? These are the steps that need to be taken. Focused on solving on problem solving that way. Now,
Yes.
now Amanda Janou also does that. I get kind of an AOC vibe from her since she's younger,
Okay.
under age 40. That's Alexandra Cortez, Ocasio-Cortez, in case you don't know the AOC initials, but the same kind of energy of challenging the assumptions about power and who's in charge and what can be done, and just challenging the whole uh, economic and political system. And some there might be some a little uncomfortable in that, but
This is true.
but they do meet, they do like each other, they do agree on more than they disagree. The key is it all circles back to that one big question. Can either of them beat Phil Scott? And more than beat Phil Scott, beat the people that are going to be backing Phil Scott that are not necessarily from Vermont. There's going to be a lot, this all signs indicate there's going to be a lot of outside money poured into Vermont. They're already trying this for this election. Say in Becca Balint's case, who probably has one of the safest congressional seats in America, they're still trying to muddy her up with bogus AI generated advertising and things like that.
Yeah.
And remember during the last gubernatorial campaign in 2024, they were trying to tie the clean energy bill to that they're trying to ban fossil fuels and all kinds dictate what you can heat your house with
Mm-hmm.
and all kinds of misleading statements. And they
And some
were
bad
all,
math.
yeah, bad math, and also that never was a mandate.
Mm-hmm.
But they, neglected to mention that in the advertising. Laura Sibilia was one of the targets of that, the independent rep from Dover, and but others were around the state, and the mailings were just alarmist uh, and not true.
Mm-hmm.
And you can expect to see more of that. There's lots of money sloshing around, and Vermont is a cheap place to buy ads for politics, and you don't for a cheap place to buy political advertising, and it's easy because the market is so compact in so many different places. Unfortunately, none of that money ever, very little of that money ever went to the commons. Is you know, media love political advertising because they can charge the full rate for
Mm-hmm.
for for that. There's no discounts for political advertising, and the people pay the bills. Very few people campaign stiff radio or television stations or newspapers. And does it still work? Hard to say because habits are changing. People don't watch the 6 o'clock news on Channel 3 reliably anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And how much of this is migrating online, which is a black hole.
Mm-hmm. So, given that it's likely Vermonters are going to get bombarded,
Well, I
how do they pull that apart? I mean, how
yeah,
do they tease apart these political ads so that they can make informed decisions?
I don't know. Read the comments. I guess, if you hear something, uh, your first instinct is this is true,
Mm-hmm.
and start, uh, doing some research, and not just taking the first entry on Google, because we know
Right.
the first entry on Google is usually a paid ad or paid placement.
Mm-hmm.
Just, if you hear something that doesn't sound right, you ought to check it out. And that's what our job as reporters are as journalists are. If, we hear something doesn't sound right, we check it out.
Hmm. Do you, as a reporter yourself, do you have sources that you go to that you feel are pretty reliable when you're trying to um, dig into a candidate?
Well, it always hurts, does never hurts to start with the candidate.
Right. Yes.
And fortunately, in Vermont, they're accessible.
Hmm.
You're not you're going to be hard pressed not to meet any people running for office. And Emily Kornheiser and Ian Goodnow will be flipping burgers on the Common, I think, next week for their campaign kickoff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you're going to be the Molly Gray's made multiple stops down here. The one thing, the person we haven't seen a lot of down here, of course, is Phil Scott,
Huh. Okay. Interesting. Why do you think that is?
because he knows he can't carry Windham County, and why bother? I mean, yes, there are Republicans in Windham County, and yes, there are Democrats. There's still the Scott Democrats.
Hmm.
I mean, it's you've probably heard the axiom that Vermont is 40 will vote 40% for the Democrat, 40% for the Republican, and there's a 20% in that are will waver between the Democratic and the Republican candidate.
I had not heard that, but I'm not surprised if, yeah. I've always heard that Vermonters tend to vote across the ballot.
They vote across. They're not straight line party ticket voters, and they also vote for the person. And Phil Scott always such a nice guy. And, and we know we've seen in over the years that that nice guy persona can cover up things that aren't so nice.
Such as?
Well, I won't enumerate them here, but certainly the stuff he's been spreading around about the about affordability and what's to blame for it.
Mm, okay.
And also, I kind of demonizing the legislature.
Yeah,
It's
that's
the ledge's
interesting.
fault. It's the ledge's fault that you can't afford to live in Vermont because of all their stupid ideas that they try to put at me. And I'm the only one that stops the ledge from all these goofy ideas that they have becoming law.
Hmm. That is one of the arguments he uses.
Yeah. And granted, Vermont seems to not mind having divided government. But you notice things took a real turn when the supermajority disappeared, and a lot of that had to do with negative advertising targeting some members of the ledge and winnowing
Okay.
down their numbers.
Hmm.
But and there's going to be a lot of turnover this coming year with Joe Kerensky not running again,
Yep.
so there's going to be a new speaker, um,
Well, and a new pro tem as well.
new Senate. And a lot of senior members once again leaving because it's so hard to be a lawmaker in Vermont when you got it's a 5 month a year job, and how many people can afford to take 5 months off from work?
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, that is the irony of our citizen legislatures. We want it to be run by citizens, but not every citizen can afford to actually be a lawmaker. And their stipend is not very high. It will not replace 5 months of wages.
Maybe it still worked when it was based on the growing season, and there
Farmers
was
couldn't do anything anyways.
and every town still had somebody sent to the house, and you could nothing was going to be not much was doing on the farm until April anyway, so you might as well be in Montpelier.
Hmm. Yep. So, as you're looking out at the landscape of candidates heading up to the primary, um, again, referring to John Walters, because we've been talking about this lately when he comes on the show, you know, John has been tracking what concerns him and the Republican Party, and about uh candidates being further and further to the right. Um, I don't know for you, when you look out at the landscape, what are you seeing just in general?
Well, the Republicans we remember growing up,
Hmm.
we always thought of the part of of Republicans being, mo at least, in New England being fiscally fiscally conservative, socially um, more liberal than say today, which is, fiscally conservative when it comes to spending money that might help people and socially let's send money attack people we don't like.
Hmm.
And the kind of the way people used the people Republicans used to be. You think of I mean, there's a reason why George Aiken and Ernest Gibson and are thought of so fondly because yeah, they were conservative in terms of we don't want to spend money unnecessarily, but if there's something that needs to be done, it has to be done.
Hmm.
They not don't necessarily stand and say no all the time.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, and that's what made them and some of the other people of the party that we once knew. And that party doesn't seem to exist anymore. It's a party that seems to be meaner than ever, a party that seems to be look for scapegoats instead of solutions,
Hmm.
a party that well, I know, Harry Truman used to say GOP stood for guardians of privilege.
Oh, I haven't heard that one. Okay. Any other thoughts on the candidate landscape before the primary?
Well, it's definitely a Democratic year in Vermont and across the country because of the administration in Washington and the things that it has done. And you can even in even in Vermont, I think that well, Vermont has tried to fight off the worst of what's been coming down from Washington,
Hmm.
and has been fairly successful at it in some ways. With all the lawsuits that Charity Clark has filed against the administration,
Hmm.
and and sometimes Governor Scott stepping in to block the most extreme elements of that, but there are other things that he's kind of let slide.
Hmm. Hmm. Can you give an example?
Mm, I think the giving Social Security information,
Yeah.
that was one that was a big one.
Okay.
He'll do one thing, I don't know. I hope someday I hope the governor comes down and talks with us,
Hmm.
and he has an open invitation to,
Yes, he does.
because or maybe we have to invite him.
Well,
But
both.
normally, candidate. I mean, I haven't seen Phil Scott in our office since the day he came in with his bicycle shorts on and doing his uh, bike bike ride around Vermont.
Oh,
Back
wow. Yeah, that
back
was a while ago.
Yeah, that was the last time I saw Phil Scott in our office.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
when was the last time you seen Phil Scott in person?
Gosh, I think it was one of the trips he made, when he does Montpelier for a day,
Yeah,
it was a visit to Brattleboro. So it was at the library and at the Post 5.
yeah. So fairly safe places. And I noticed this last time they did the uh,
Capital for a day, not Montpelier. Yeah.
capital for a day, they spent most of his time up in Wilmington and
Yes.
in Dover.
Yep. Um, Speaking of towns, let's again, in the interest of time, let's make a little U-turn here.
Brattleboro.
Brattleboro! Yeah, let's talk about Brattleboro for a couple minutes. The Downtown Brattleboro Alliance has a new program.
Yes,
Tell us about that.
as you see some fresh-faced young people on the street wanting to help you if you've befuddled, if you're new to town and you're wondering, where do I go? What do I do? What's happening? Ask a community ambassador. They'll be wearing spiffy vests. They'll be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to help.
All right. Have you had a chance to meet any of these ambassadors?
They're still recruiting them.
Ah,
So
okay.
I think you will see there's still time to apply for that through the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. There's something in this week's Commons about that. There's and I imagine the rollout's going to be timed with the Fourth of July festivities.
Which are coming up. Wow.
Yes, coming up fast. But I guess the first big party in Brattleboro will be on Wednesday when they cut the ribbon for the new train station,
Ooh, that's right. That is exciting.
or the last bit of federal largesse Brattleboro will ever see at this rate. I remember Peter Welsh being there, and we had the big sign on there talking about that the money came from Joe Biden and and ARPA, the American Recovery
Hmm.
Plan.
So Wednesday is the ribbon cutting?
Yes, Wednesday is the ribbon cutting, the 24th.
So, I have seen plans for this station. I think it's pretty exciting. And you are much more of a train spotter than I am, Randy. So, what's exciting for you about this new station?
Well, for me, that's, it gets it out of the baggage area of the old station. That, the old station was not exactly a welcoming place. It's kind of a cave-like thing, and
Having
maybe
used it, yes.
yes, and certainly, looking at that side of the back of the museum, it's not exactly a gateway to Brattleboro. I mean, this new one, it's better than the usual Amshack, as some of the train people call them. Kind of the prefab buildings that look like crap and just they're
Hmm.
utility better than a bus shelter kind of stations. This one looks nice, but more importantly has the high platform, so you don't have to step up to the train.
Yeah, anyone who's had to climb into the train from ground level, it's actually kind of a haul, and getting out of the train when you're still kind of wobbly because you have a little bit of a sea legs from being on the train, climbing down those steps was a
And
little
if you
rough.
Yes, and if you have mobility issues, even worse. So
Yeah.
that's going to be the first high level platform in Vermont. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, that's really big for accessibility.
And it's more of a better welcome mat to Brattleboro to have that there, have a decent place where you can board and arrive into Brattleboro.
Hmm.
And maybe the hope, and we keep hoping for this, that say Massachusetts uh, starts running the Valley Flyers from that stops at Greenfield right now. How hard would it be to have it go up to Brattleboro?
Right.
Or one step further, how hard would it be to go up to White River Junction and do a whole length of the valley, Connecticut Valley?
Hmm.
The Valley Flyer, turns is a pretty well patronized train. It runs mainly between Greenfield and Springfield, but it also can Massachusetts, but it also continues on down to New Haven.
Hmm.
So if you can't make the Vermonter in that one trip to south to New York, you have a morning option and a late in the day option to go south to New York.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's one thing about riding the trains in Vermont is it's a really nice way to travel. It's not super expensive, especially with gas prices being what they are these days. However, you can't like go up to say from Brattleboro to Burlington and home in a day. You have to take like 3 days. Same with Montpelier, it's not really designed for day trips or commuting or that type of thing, at least not yet.
Well, it can work if you're going from Burlington to Brattleboro, but unfortunately, you'd only get about three hours or so in Brattleboro if you do that. If you take the train down from Essex Junction
Hmm.
down to Brattleboro and maybe have lunch and do a little window shopping and be back for the train at 5.
Right. So yeah, if you're going one way, it still works, but
Well,
uh,
it's the same way if you felt like taking the train down to Northampton from Brattleboro. You have one shot and you'll get less than 2 hours to be in Northampton before you have to catch the northbound train.
right. Yeah, so it's not really commutable yet. It's not day trippy yet. I
Well,
just think that would be really awesome.
the hope is that the state of Massachusetts is working on more trains from between Springfield and Boston, which could connect to Brattleboro
Hmm.
that way and continue. It's just people are getting older and it's harder to drive, and it'd be nice to be able to take to get on a train in Brattleboro and go to Boston for a concert or a game or just to travel that way or to bring it back to Montreal.
Hmm.
I mean, that's still sitting there and it's still tied up with on both sides of the border with red tape and bureaucracy
Hmm.
and train company needs.
Hmm. I know that would be fabulous to be able to get up to Montreal.
It's something to bring several large coolers, bring back some of the cheese and viande fumée.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
But that's all just a dream for now. But the main thing is there's a nicer station in Brattleboro, and there's going to be a big party on Wednesday with, I guess at the end of the day, there'll be a kind of the Words Trail is going to have an installation at the station, and that's going to be the starting point for visitors if they want to explore our literary history. And there'll be people portraying the characters on the Words Trail in the
Nice.
evening. So,
Nice. Okay. So we are out of time. Any last minute thoughts, Randy, you want to share with folks?
well, there's a big party coming on for the fourth the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence and the founding of America. And there'll be events in Saxons River as always, and Brattleboro, the Brattleboro Going Forth Parade, which, as you notice, isn't involved with America 250. It's its own animal
Okay.
still, and the O'Connor family would like to keep it that way.
All right.
It's still the that parade that is such a microcosm of Brattleboro and all its various flavors.
Hmm.
The Wardsboro is having their it's the oldest continuous Fourth of July parade and picnic in Vermont. They started just after the war and continued since then. They're up to edition 77
Oh, wow. Okay.
up in Wardsboro. The Saxons River is always a good party. Guilford will be doing something. Grafton will be doing something. and other towns around the state will be in uh, to celebrate the good, what's good about America. We get, and in a way, like the World Cup has been a celebration of what's good about bringing people together and enjoying themselves. I mean, this watching the Scottish supporters, the Tartan Army take over Boston has been such a trip. But other and but they also, but at the same time, they embraced Haiti, who's there in Boston too, and watching the Cape Verde folk and down in New Bedford and Providence in that area. Lots of them in that part of Massachusetts celebrate their getting a draw against Spain.
Hmm.
And so that's part of it. Part of that is America to me, of
Hmm.
people coming together in joy and celebrating what's good.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for ending on that really wonderful note. Um, Hey everyone, have a great weekend. The Montpelier Happy Hour will be back next week, speaking with Abby Long from the Northeast Kingdom Collaborative, and she's also the former executive director of the Kingdom Trails, and we'll be talking about collaboration and how you work across communities um, on shared goals. And Randy, news editor from The Commons, thank you so much for being here today.
And just a reminder, there's no paper on the week of 4th of July, so there's no Commons coming out on July 1st. So if you go rush to your favorite place to pick up a Commons, you won't find it there. But we'll be back the following week because we're we needed to break too.
Yes, yes, reporters need a break too. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend. We will see you next week.